We now have a forum to open our board meeting for June 15th. We'll start with introductions and we'll just go around the table and we can introduce ourselves instead of me doing it for everybody. So, Tony Luisi, DEC Regional Director and Board Chair.
And I'm Chris Albra, I'm the Executive Director.
I am Curry, Director of Operations for the Town of Albany.
Mike McLaughlin, Director of Policy for the Albany County Executive.
Nancy Pearson, a citizen representative.
Don Cejas, representing the town of Gilman.
And John Gross, also citizen representative.
Okay, excellent. Good morning, everyone. So first item is to consider the minutes from the March meeting, which is included in your board packet. And for introductions, we had a late ad. Casey, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Casey Woodruff, Natural Resource for New York State Parks.
Great, good morning. Does anyone have any comments on the draft minutes from the March meeting? And if not, we have a motion to approve.
I'll do that.
And a second? Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any comments from the public at this time?
I'm Bob C. from Friends of the English Community. I'd like to give a quick update on what we're doing. So we provided some financial support for a recent Earth Day event, Lupin Pine Fest, or Lupin Fest, and yesterday's Nature Night Out. And for the Lupin Fest, we received funding from a grant from the Maurice D. Pinchy Hudson River Heritage area. So that was a $2,500 grant for funding for the animal program and the live music and the Lupin Fest. And the education department here is hosting the Orangeburg Middle School butterfly station students for a couple of visits this summer, and the Friends Prize support for a pizza lunch for them. And Gilman High School Environmental Club recently sent a donation in of almost $100 to the Friends, and so we're gonna show our appreciation in the fall. We'll host them on a little hike to the Pine Bush. And the Friends has a few members on the planning committee for the Barron's birding blitz. I'll get all that out. And they're also sponsoring financial support for the t-shirts and a lunch at the award ceremony. Filming for the documentary has begun, and the Friends has paid the first 2 installments for that. Third one due next year. Third and last one due next year after the film is complete. And we're continuing sponsoring some hikes in the Pine Bush, leading some hikes in the Pine Bush about 2 months now during the summer. And we're getting fair turnouts for those, like 10 to 20 people, so it's good. I think that was everything I needed to mention.
And can you remind everyone the details about the documentary you mentioned?
Oh, yeah, it's a documentary about the Pine Bush, so they've been started filming it. Chris mentioned that they found a warbler's nest, so they're doing some filming of that. Described burns, and we're filming at Lupin Fest, so it's about a 20-minute documentary, is that right?
Yeah, 15 to 20.
Yeah, about 20-minute documentary of the Pine Bush. So the Friends has raised some money, donations, and some grants to fund that. And so the work started filming up. We're excited about it. I want to see the final product. It's wonderful, right?
And when the documentary is done, will there be an event here for kind of the grand
that's
opening?
the plan, yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that. Any additional comments from the public? If not, we'll move on to reports. Starting with me, I actually don't have a report today, so we can move on to any other board members.
I'll just mention that the Lupin Fest was a lot of fun, in spite of maybe the weather was not looking great. And I'm always amazed at how the staff at the Pine Bush, everyone is pitching in, and they do a great job. So congratulations to all the staff and all the people who put that together, because it was just a great effort and people had a lot of fun. learn a lot and enjoy it.
Tony, I'd like to offer, the program update that we get in our packet is so professionally done. And it's personalized now, where we used to have good narratives, for those of us who survived by looking at pictures. It really helps. So Patty and others, whoever's involved in this, great job.
That helped me this time, so thank you, Beth. Thank you, John.
And while you mention it, as I'm looking at the program update, it reminds me of a great site visit that the Pine Bush hosted for me and the division director for Lands and Forests and the natural resource supervisor. Chris and Neil took a lot of time out of their busy schedules to walk us around the property and teach us a lot about fire management and habitat. And I heard a lot of positive feedback from that site visit. Thank you again for that.
Should I jump in?
Mhm.
Right. So I won't go through the update, but I will echo that the update looks great. Thank you, Patty, for taking the lead on that, and Beth helping, and Wendy helping, and other staff. Our update, if you remember, it was basically a memo, and then we started adding pictures, and Word doesn't like that. So Wendy said, what if we do it in Publisher? And Patty figured it out and worked with other staff, and it really looks good. So go through that, and you can see there's a lot of stuff going on in all the departments in the last quarter. And I won't get into too much of that, but I wanted to mention Lupin Fest. Nancy, thanks for your kind words. So Beth McCollum she was the coordinator for Lupin Fest this year, but she did it with lots and lots of other staff from the Lupin Fest committee. And that whole project basically takes a year of planning. So we're starting to plan for the Fest next year, or we will be after people breathe for a couple of weeks. Casey, you were there. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, that was excellent.
Yep. And Lupin Fest is now, we've taken on a number of these events, these public events. Lupin Fest is the biggest. Lupin Fest this year brought in about 2,000 people. That's a lot of people that we're reaching. But last night was, this is the second year we're doing what's called Nature Night Out. Last year we started this with 3 evenings. We did them on Fridays in June, July, and August. This year we're doing it on Wednesdays. So last night was the first one, where we keep the Discovery Center open past closing time, which is usually at 4. So we keep it open from 4 to 7. We have a food truck, we have an ice cream truck, we have some live music, we have staff and members from the Friends of the Congress community here and volunteers to help out. The story walk is set up. And yesterday's forecast, and it was, it started to rain at like 4:30. We still had on the clicker 172 people. So that's good. And I just said to Tony, Wendy was mentioning me, and I saw this gentleman come in with his 2 young kids dressed in dinosaur raincoats. And he said he follows us on Facebook, and he was so happy to be able to come to this because he can't take his kids here when he comes home from work because it closes at 4. So he's looking forward to the other ones. So I just want to say, Nature Night Out is yet another project, and I thank our staff for doing that. And Bob mentioned the Barron's Birding Blitz. That's September 16th. That's another event that we're doing that's sponsored by the Friends. And that's on our website, and you'll get more information about that. And I'm going to leave it at that because we have a lot on the agenda.
Great. And next up is Neil.
Good morning, everyone. So technical committee report for the quarter. Technical committee met once this past quarter and reviewed a project in a fall protection area on Morris Road, 136 Morris Road in the town of Colony. So fall protection area, also in the town of Colony's Conservation Overlay District. And the project sits between a couple of different protected properties. It really represents the only potentially viable connection across Morris Road between those 2 properties north of the CSX railroad track, so it's kind of a critical link. The technical committee asked, this was our 3rd review of this project. A relatively small project for two office warehouses. The committee, we asked that they try and again maximize the potential connection by leaving a sufficiently located corridor undeveloped. And we also asked for a full environmental assessment form. At this third iteration, they submitted the full environmental assessment form and increased the width of this corridor that was about 10 feet, now about 12 feet wide. So it's still relatively insignificant for the function that we really need to perform. So we reiterated in our letter, the significant inconsistencies with the 2017 management plan update and suggested that they go back to the drawing board, and the project is currently with the planning department in the town of Colony. The other project that we talked about, but we have not yet seen the project application for, is the Leisure Kill 1 and 2 projects, the community solar projects out on Curry Road. We briefly discussed that project. We have not yet been requested to review and comment on it. At their June planning board meeting, the planning board issued a seeker positive declaration. It calls for the preparation of an environmental impact statement. And I received the EMB notice on that actually in my mailbox this morning. Applicants made it clear that they're designing the project to exceed the Fish and Wildlife Services threshold for creating net conservation benefit for carnival butterflies. That's because they're working with an NGO we're aware of, Nature Conservancy, to be able to simultaneously create native meadow suitable for supporting partners and the community solar farm. If they're able to actually implement what they're designing, it should end up as making that conservation benefit. For Carters, they're also proposing to do some additional pine bark restorations outside the solar farm. So with that positive declaration, we expect the first time we'll see the project application in its entirety will be a scoping. So they'll be opening the scoping, secret scoping soon, and I assume requesting commission review and comment on that. So I imagine this project will take a bulk of the technical committee's time in the coming year.
You know, of 73 acres, how much will be covered with solar?
Just over half, I believe. It's physically, John, it's most of that open field that's there. But when you add up just the area of the panels, it's about half, about 30%. They're not using concrete, they're using, the helical screws basically. So minimal impact. Their whole business model that they discussed with the Nature Conservancy is instead of having turf grass, they plant native prairies and prairie grasses and wildflowers for pollinators. And in this case, given that the hunters are here and they're literally right next door, and all that habitat is restored, they want to encourage hunters to create habitat on their project. In order to do that, the Nature Conservancy several years ago received what's called the safe harbor permit, which basically is an incentive that allows a private entity, if they want to do something positive for endangered species, there's a way that they can do that and have their project go through and still have assurances against any illegal taking of the endangered animals. So it's kind of a nice compromise win-win, if it all works. Of course, as any project, typically one in a full protection area of this scope, the devil's always in the detail. So that we, myself, staff, technical committee, look forward to digging into the application in detail and kind of looking through and making sure that what they have said they're going to do actually looks like exactly.
Will that potentially become a best management practice for solar?
Ideally, it's their entire business model. The company is actually out of Europe, and this is their MO. They plant native grasses and wildflowers. They fence it in a way that is, they don't use chain link. They use box wire, sheep and cattle fencing. And typically, instead of mowing them once a year, they bring sheep in.
Yeah.
We wouldn't want that here, of course, because they would eat all the native plants that we want to provide. We would want to see providing habitat for all the, not just hunter blues, but lots of other native pollinators. So it's a potential win-win if it goes through. Of course, it's in a full protection area, so ideally, we'd like to see that property protected. But absent that, which is what the committee always said, absent being able to protect it, we'd like to try and strike a balance. This seems like potentially a reasonable balance. But again, the devil's in the detail, and we'll find out when we go through the DEIS.
And I trust you'll vet them and you'll look for other projects that they've done and you'll go visit them and
Have been for 2 years.
come back to us. Okay.
But
The one, you stand at the podium.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I forgot myself.
Oh, no.
Because you get captured by the camera that way.
This goes off the formal, but now Casey's behind the pole.
Oh, actually, we'll move on. I was just curious. My
Yeah, go ahead.
thought was, how are they
But
going
then you
to
got to speak up.
maintain it? Did you get any information about how they?
Yeah, so
the habitat?
they met with us in the Nature Conservancy over 2 years, pre-COVID actually, talk about all of that conceptually. So it'd be mowed once a year. So mowing it once a year and spot treatment, just like what we do in our preserves and parks. If there's an invasive issue, you would deal with that when it's small and localized. And we even talked about the potential for, depending on how it's located, if we're burning the adjacent property nearby, smoke goes over, is that an issue? And they said, no. You know, they don't really wash their panels, that typically, it rips off when it rains. Yeah, so again, conceptually, it seems like it could work, but like I said, the devil's always in the details. Any other questions on project review? Then I wanted to shift gears a little bit. Again, I can't see, sorry. You all, in your packet, you have the 2003 Fire Management Plan white paper. So Tyler and I have completed the redraft of the Fire Management Plan itself, which you will hopefully see in September at your next meeting. But we've completed the redraft, and that includes a white paper evaluating modest changes to some of the required fuel and weather parameters needed for safely implementing prescribed fire in the preserve. If adopted, these changes will improve our ability to safely meet both our fuel reduction goals and our ecological management objectives. Again, the document's in your packet. You all will have until the September meeting to review and consider those potential changes in the Fire Management Plan. So I'm happy to review the stuff in the white paper that I gave you. The last page, the summary table of the proposed changes, and I highlighted the changes for you on that table, and I put the existing. Did I just do something later on my paper? Sorry, Chris. So I'm happy to go through that table if you want. But you'll have plenty of opportunity to review it. Oh, you were doing that.
Yes. I was doing that. I'm the guy behind the curtain.
But in addition to that paper, I also wanted to point out that I wanted to discuss briefly with you. I think it's important that you're aware of the process and timeline that we're following for this. So Tyler and I have been working on this for well over a year since you all authorized us to review the management plan. We've evaluated SEEKR and ECL Article 46, the Commission's enabling legislation. We've reviewed those, and per Article 46, we are planning on a public meeting and a 40-day public comment period on the revised draft fire management plan. I've worked with the Region 4 permit staff to ensure we're following the proper processes and develop a process and timeline that will culminate in your consideration of the updated fire management plan in September. So long story short, and I'm too late, the SEEKR process that we're following does not necessarily require either a public comment period or a public meeting. However, our enabling legislation does require a public meeting, and it makes sense if we're putting this thing out there for the public, we might as well give them a public comment period. So the process starts today with this discussion, and then on Monday, the 19th, we're going to post the draft fire management plan and the white paper to our website. That will announce the public meeting and the opening of the public comment period, consistent with Article 46. Wendy was kind enough to create a new email address, so people will be emailing their comments to managementplan@albanypinebush.org. That's then going to be automatically forwarded to my inbox. The press release announcing the process, the timeline, and document availability is going out either today or tomorrow or Monday. Patty was also kind enough to post a legal notice. Again, this is going way beyond what we need to do. So there's a legal notice going out in the Times Union, the Schenectady Gazette, Altamont Enterprise, the Colony Spotlight, and the Gilman Spotlight. Did I miss anything?
No, the Gilman is the Del Mar Spotlight.
Del Mar Spotlight. Additionally, we will post notice in the July Commission newsletter on our website and on Facebook and Instagram.
And Twitter.
Yes, on Twitter. The technical committee is going to meet on July 11th. So when the technical committee meets on July 11th, we're going to be reviewing our draft of the short environmental assessment form and the draft of the fire management plan itself. Our public meeting is going to be in this room on July 18th from 7 to 9 p.m. Hopefully it won't take that long, but it'll take as long as it takes. And then the public comment period will close at 4:30 on July 28th. Your meeting, of course, is in September. So between July 28th and your meeting and the prep for your August or your September board meeting, you will go through the public comments, address any comments that need to be addressed, and any potential changes to our redraft. So what you will see when you meet next in the fall, we'll be presenting all of that to you.
There's a request for our September board packet. Could we get a red line version of the plan?
But absolutely, and that's the plan.
Great.
So the version that's going on our website will just be a clean copy, but you all will see, will receive, like we always do for updating policies or whatever. You'll get the track changes version. There are minor track changes throughout the whole document, but the bulk of the changes, the most significant changes are on that table. On this table. That's all I had, unless you have questions for me. You know, I'm happy to try and answer it now, but I don't know how much time you've had to try and digest that white paper, so there will not be a quiz today.
Thanks, Neil.
Thanks, Neil.
All right, Lisa.
Everybody. I will be presenting just 1 month of the fiscal year. This is just through April, so there's not too much here. We will start with the statement of financial activities on the revenue side. We had dues and contributions. This is budgeted at 0. This is a placeholder for quarterly dues from Trusto. They will show up March, September, December, and the following March. We had a private donation of 125, so that was great. Government grant and contract, slightly under, and this is due to expenses for DEC that were slightly under for the month. Mitigation fees are 0. Again, you will see this quarterly in June, September, December, and March. This is for our landfill mitigation. Lease revenue is on budget, and other revenue is slightly higher, and this is due to increased merchandise sales in the Discovery Center. So total revenue came in at 97% of budget for the 1 month of April. Onto expenses, personnel and fringe came in a little bit higher than budget. This is due to a large benefit payment from our workers. We paid the annual payment in April. Travel and training is on budget. Contractual is slightly over budget. This is due to a large sorting contract for invasive species that was paid. Communications is slightly over budget. This is due to brochures, postcards, and Looping tests that we flipped up prepaid from last year into April. Supplies and equipment are on budget. Other expenses slightly over budget. We have a large insurance payment for our liability and our auto. So total expenses came in a little bit over budget for the year. Revenue came in under budget, giving us a net deficit of $44,000 through the month of April. Again, this is timing. This will catch up over the year. If we move on to non-cash operating, $21,000 of depreciation. We have a net gain of $67,000 from our investments, giving us a total deficit of $9,200. On to
That's it.
That's it, we got it, okay. On the asset side, cash and cash equivalents, it increased about $193,000, and this is just due to spending. In April, grants receivable are $277,000. This is the money over for April, and March, we did receive a $35,000 payment for March, the last quarter. Accounts receivable, this is the mitigation that was overthrown due to lease receivable. You're going to see 2 new accounts on this report. The lease receivable here, and down below on the liabilities is the lease liability, which is a deferred inflow. This is the new requirement, which Chris Stevens from the SDR auditing firm will get into in more detail. It's GASB 87, we refer to that. And in essence, we have to record our entire lease. If it's long-term, over 12 months, we have to record the whole thing as a receivable now and a deferred inflow. And then we will back that out at every year, and we will adjust that for the actual lease revenue. We have an interest income portion, which I'll let Chris explain. So it will adjust that every year. Our lease revenue, you will see from the previous report, will still be $15,141 per month, which is about $181,000 per year. This is just a different way of booking it and looking at it according to government accounting standards. inventory, is just actual. So that stays the same. Prepaid expenses decreased $71,000, $72,000. This you will see every March to April because we have to record at the end of every fiscal year all expenses that are actually taking place in the next fiscal year, and we put that in April. Investment, we have a slight increase in $57,000 in all four funds. Capital assets decreased $21,000. This is just due to depreciation expense monthly. Land stayed the same, and deferred outflows and pension assets, this will remain the same until we get our new VSB 6871 report from the New York State Retirement System. And we make that actual physical cash payment in November, so you will see that change on the financials in November. So just a slight decrease in our total assets for the month of April. On the liability side, accounts payable is the only thing that changed. It increased $280, and it's just due to expenses that increased. Deferred revenue, this stayed the same, all four will apply, except for the lease rental will stay the same too, or lease liability, sorry. Deferred revenue stayed the same. This is our national grid, and as we use it, you will see this decrease, and our mitigation revenue increase. We will put that. Pension liability, again, that will come, that adjustment will come in November, and this is our lease liability for deferred inflows, which is the new GASB 87 that went through this year and last year. OPEB liability stayed the same. Again, this will change when we run the actuarial report through Milliman, and that will change in January. So our net liability decreased $280. Not much there. Total assets, capital assets decreased $21,000 due to depreciation. So our total net decrease was $9,210, which relates to the income statement. All right, and on to our investments. Actually, revenues, we had $57,000 increase as of April. $16,000 was in our reserve fund. We have $1,000 increase in our Discovery Center endowment, $35,000 in for endowment, and about $5,000 in our open. Hopefully June will be even a better month according to the last 2 weeks of the market. Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Liz.
Aaron?
Good morning. Good morning. Going to give an update on our Discovery Center ground concept design. Okay, so at the March Commission meeting, I gave an update on our Discovery Center grounds concept design, which our Discovery Center grounds committee, which is made up of staff, was working together with Berkman Associates to come up with solutions for some of the issues that we've been experiencing with the Discovery Center grounds over the past several years. Some of those issues include accessibility, safety, and also aesthetic, and really communicating what's great about the Albany pine bush and the inland fish pine scrub oak barrens, and helping people to really get a sense of the ecology when they come to visit here. So at the last meeting, I gave kind of an in-progress update. I showed some slides of some of the plans that we had developed to date, and this is a refinement of that, and this is the final concept plan that Irving completed with us earlier in May. So I'm just going to take you through some pictures, and feel free to ask questions along the way. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit here. This is the overall idea, the overall concept plan. And you may notice a lot of things look the same and some things look different. I'll just scroll up here. side view of all the changes in a nutshell right here. So looking down, we're looking at the Discovery Center here, and here's our entryway. So when you enter in, there's an addition of this island here. We have a lot of traffic issues at this entrance here with people coming in and turning around, and the traffic's bad. So this is a safety feature here to try to reduce the occurrence of that. There's also a little apron here for
Oh, that's right. It's right.
okay, so how do I reverse that? All right, well.
When you do that again, and then there's a view at the top. That comes up.
It'll be on the left.
You.
You can probably expand it on the laptop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can do that. I don't know.
Been there, done that.
I'm not sure.
See the little bubble in the upper right corner, that says view, after you touch it once.
Oh, on the right corner?
Yeah, touch the screen anywhere,
Okay,
and then view pops up. I think there's a
Oh, up here?
screen up.
Yeah.
Yep.
gotcha. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Go.
there we go, we're back in action. Okay, so back over here, as you enter in, there's also an addition of a little bit of topography as you come in, and the whole idea, one of the issues that we have is that we have a lot of sound coming from the roadway. And so this is to shield the Discovery Center from that. So there's there's a dune along there that will shield the sound as you come in and create more of kind of a enclosed entrance. You feel like you're entering into the Pine Barrens. Also, just near the leach field, there's also a little bit more topography added here. And then there's also an accessible drop-off area. So this is a shorter distance to the front door. So it allows people a shorter distance with benches and rest areas along the way to come to the Discovery Center. And then you can continue along out into the parking area. Some additional safety features that were added is really trying to help create a safer experience for people entering from the parking lot, going towards the Discovery Center in the grounds. And these light shaded areas are actually slightly raised areas. So that's kind of like a little table. So that slows people down as they enter into here. You'll also notice it over here. So right now, a lot of people, when they enter, they come right in front of the Discovery Center. They go right by the stop sign. We have a lot of kids and people circulating in this area. So it creates a safety concern. So by raising this and creating more of like a speed bump kind of a feeling, it gives people a really clear indication that you need to slow down. So this whole area here is slightly raised. This will continue to be a bus drop-off area, so that will still have some traffic, but the whole idea is to curtail the traffic and slow people down. And then this is the pedestrian access to the Discovery Center here. And then other additional features to try to reduce people from moving from the parking lot across Habitat and into the Discovery Center. Some topography has been added in this section as well. So right now it's flat, you can just walk right across it if you don't mind hopping the little yellow chain there, but this whole idea is to really focus people on these safer access points to the Discovery Center. And there's also access to the trails down here. So that was another issue too, is that we have this convergence of fast moving vehicles and people trying to get to the trails. So these different features, this raised area addresses that. Also, some other interesting features is, and I think I mentioned this the last time, but really moving a lot of the activity that happens outside down to an area that's more protected from the sound of the road and the visual of the road. So that's right now we have a play area that's out in this location, and it's moving that down to the east side of the building so that you have the shield of the building and you have a little bit more protection, and you're also closer to the preserve. So you're actually right near the start of the trail, and you're really more immersed in the Pine Barrens kind of down on this end of the building rather than kind of being exposed to the traffic on the other side. There's also an accessible path that comes along here and loops around. So this is using an existing trail. At one point we were thinking of kind of going in the other direction, but we decided on this approach. And also this pathway here is an accessible exit emergency exit from the building, from the second story conference room here. We do currently have an exit, but it is not, it doesn't meet ADA standards, so it's not fully accessible. So this path using the existing trail loops around. This is an access point that's used by management vehicles. So it's just completing that loop, bringing people back to the Discovery Center. And it doesn't show on this map, but it kind of makes like a figure 8 with our existing Discovery Loop trail that goes up to that Trumbull range out here and loops back around. And that makes additional opportunities for accessible pathways in this reserve. So what I'll do now is I'll just take you through a few pictures and show you what that might look like on the ground. So each of these little thumbnails corresponds with keeping us slow moving. Yeah, big graphics. Yep. So this shows a car on the driveway. Here is the island that would be installed to try to prevent the traffic turnarounds that are happening in the driveway right now. This also, looking out towards the building right here, this feature is added as really a great way to highlight this is the Discovery Center. Again, we still get comments like, oh, I thought you were an abandoned building. This really gives people the idea this is a place and you should come visit. And so this is a way to really highlight the Discovery Center. In another image, you'll see there's a graphic of a war alert on the front of the building. And this area right now is where the old drive-through is. So that low ceiling that's out here, that used to be the bank drive-through, that we have a children's play area. That's the area that's moving to the other end. And so the idea was to kind of open this up because it's kind of a low, dark area. So to take that roof partially off there. And then behind it, just kind of the building itself reaches out. This is the second story. And currently, again, under here it's open, but we would, the idea is to glass that in to provide other opportunities inside for people to look outside and enjoy the view from indoors at that location. This is along the pedestrian access way. So this is coming from, if you're in the parking lot, you're kind of here and you're coming in to the building. Here's a bus at the drop off. And this is an added feature of a dune walkthrough. So this is kind of a fun, right now we have these little kind of horseshoe shaped paths out in front of the building that are used to some extent, but they don't really lead to anywhere. So this was an idea where people could come in and actually go right over to the play area and go through the dune there. Here's a view looking at the building. This was another idea of how to, one of the things that we struggle with is the facade, the look out to the bank, and a lot of people not recognizing, again, what this place is. So one idea was to try to really bring the outside, blend the outside and the inside of the building. So when people come into the building, they say, oh, wow, this is really nice. This is amazing. So to try to help people have experienced that feeling as they're entering, not just once they get inside. So this addition of some glass in the front is to try to help blend that the outdoors and the indoors in this area. And again, to try to work with the facade, there's not a whole lot we can do with it in terms of what exists is here and it's in good shape, but try to enhance it a little bit to improve the aesthetics.
Erin, is that seating in front of the wheelchairs?
Yes, yep. So there's a lot of seating added in the plan. Yep. So there's bench seating along here, and there's other seating. So you'll definitely see a lot of addition of areas to sit and rest in front of and in and around the building. This is along the north side of the building. So currently right now there is a landscape bed along here, but there is issues with insects and mold. So the idea is to push the landscaping out further away from the building and to create more of a promenade going out into the preserve. So these structures here are an idea of framing the landscape. So as somebody is walking through, it creates almost like a picture frame that you're looking right out into the pine bush. And it really gives you a sense that this is intentional. We're looking out into the preserve. Again, along here, more benches and different opportunities for interpretation along the promenade. We currently have a pathway that goes along the front of the building in that location. It's just removing that bed and expanding that. These are some more views of different features on the grounds. There was ideas to add artwork or different sculptural elements. This was an idea of a place where people could watch birds. So you could be behind the structure and watch birds in the landscape. This is looking out into the current leach field. And that's that dune, that topography that's added to shield your view of the road. So this is coming more kind of from where the play area is now and looking towards that glassed-in area in the front, and more native plant landscaping featured in the walkway, and more benches. Again, this is another close-up view, what we were looking at earlier with the Discovery Center signage. This is a little bit more of a view taken from that driveway, the existing driveway, which that would be the same. So as people are coming in along here, kind of looking out across the leach field and out into the landscape.
Are those metal structures artwork, or do they
Yeah.
have a function?
Right, yeah, and they're rendering just to represent, it wouldn't necessarily be that specific structure, but as a way to represent that there would be some sculptural elements there. And similarly with the play area, so these are elements that are put in as ideas. It's not the final, this is a concept design, so it's meant to illustrate that we would like structures that kids can interact with here, but it may not necessarily be these specific designs here. But this is, so moving that play area, again, back to more the eastern end of the building. We do a lot of programs with campfires, so adding in a fire pit there, and then also more seating, and there are some canopies for shade as well. And this is actually, this was a rendering that showed, different times of year at different times of day and what the shade will look like depending on the angle of the sun in the sky. So, considerations made when planning this. So on the left is January and on the right is June. And then here we're looking at the back of the building. So this is the back entrance to the building. So this is kind of a closer view of people sitting around the fire pit, and then here's some of part of the canopies, the shade canopies. And this is looking back towards the building, and here's the dune walkway. Here's a rendering at night, so we would be replacing lighting with night sky or dark sky friendly lighting, and that's helpful for nocturnal species in the preserve right now. We have some lighting that helps with that, and some that doesn't. So I just wanted to move through this. This is kind of more detailed pictures of the different materials that we considered. We have a lot of Corten steel in the landscape right now, and that was an element that can be continued. There's also information on materials for walkways, and this one that says these are some bench ideas. This one that we skip ahead to. We have a phased plan. what this diagram shows. This project is, as you can tell, it's a significant project, so we have it broken down into different phases. So these are different pieces of the project that can be accomplished in separate phases. So the phase 0 is the construction document phase. So that would be the next step, is basically the design, development, and construction documents. This is a concept plan. It has elements of a schematic design, but really it doesn't have any specific details in terms of the construction documents that a construction document would have. So the first phase that's suggested is the trail, and the second phase being the landscaping itself, right around the building, adjusting these paths, moving the play area. And then the light green phase being the building, and so it really breaks out the different costs that we have with each phase. So the idea is that we would work on design, development, and construction documents for the whole project, and then be able to implement each phase as funding is available.
And the phase 0 is the construction documents that's hidden, that's 655,000.
Right.
And phase A is 400,000.
Yes, sorry. I don't know how to move.
That's okay.
What's the discovery loop?
So the discovery loop that's not included. That is the this loop out here, which already exists.
Oh.
But we have some surfacing issues right now that we need to attend to. So it would be resurfacing that trail. Does anybody have any questions?
Aaron, I was wondering about bicycle parking and access to it, and also like bicycle and
Yeah.
bike foot.
Yeah, so that was moved towards the front of the building.
Good.
To make it more prominent, right? Right now it's tucked behind the building, so.
Yeah, first time you were hard to find it, yeah.
Yep. So we definitely took that feedback that several people shared, and so the bike parking would be moved to the front of the building.
I'm glad to see you're thinking big. This is an asset, an incredible asset for the entire region. And right now, the building does not reflect that, and the grounds don't reflect that. And this says something about the Pine. And I think it would dramatically increase the public's perception of this place and desire to come here, et cetera, et cetera. So, my first, when Chris showed it to me yesterday, I was a little bit like, whoa. But thinking about it last night and seeing it now, it really needs a project like this. The
When you
old
see
bank
the
building.
presentation, it
Yeah,
brings it together.
absolutely. You drive by and you go, that's another abandoned building. And, this is upstate New York, right? But this says, wow, we got something we respect and we're proud of, et cetera, et cetera. So I really like it.
Great, thank you. Yes, and it really gets to that indispensable community asset that's been part of our planning work for so long, and really, helping people to have something that people will feel that way about.
Yeah, I agree. It looks amazing. I was just curious, in a couple of places, there's some large additions of glass.
Yeah.
Birds being considered?
Yes,
Is that
definitely. So there's a detail, this being a concept design that reflects the idea that we really want to somehow blend the outside and the inside, but in terms of what that will look like at the end of the day, there'll be some refinement there, because the birds is definitely one consideration. Heating and cooling is another consideration. So those are different things, definitely details that we would certainly consider and think about carefully. Yeah.
Is Joel okay with all the seating? And the bonfire pit? We're still getting around to ideas that I had 20 years ago.
That's right. Right, yeah.
Hey, Aaron, did the consultant offer up any suggestions about
several that we're looking at. There's federal, state, local, private. So we have a whole list of different grants scheduled for when the applications are due. So once we start, we really need to give some more details, and then we can start raising money and pursuing grants.
I think you should solicit the support of the board and assisting in any way, advancing those funding requests.
Thank you. Yes.
Don't have to worry about that.
I'm sure Peter Barber would be happy I said.
I think this is really exciting. I think it's a necessary investment and a valuable community asset. Certainly pay dividends for decades. Was there, what was the thought process for how the phasing was determined in terms, I'm assuming A is first priority and then E is last priority. How was that determined?
That was determined based on kind of what's most achievable to do first, I think was a big consideration, and thinking about grant funding and aligning phases when funding opportunities are available was another consideration. So I think just basically kind of doability, how can we get this done, and then what is our timeline in terms of grants and fundraising, and really trying to match those opportunities as well.
And based on today, how many years do you think this might take?
A great question. Well, we're hoping we can complete the design docs within the next year. So that's, and then once we have that in place, I think that's going to really help in terms of being able to go out and look for funding sources. It will really depend on the funding grant cycles and availability of funds. So I don't even have a ballpark. We haven't really set one, but I don't know. I would say 3 to 5 years would be an estimate.
Might be aggressive, but
Probably 5-ish. You know, a lot of the grants that we go after, and we go after an awful lot, this is enough detail to go after grant money. As you get more, that's great, but I wouldn't wait a year to go after grant money.
Okay.
That the funding agencies will be very impressed with everything you've done. Usually, you know, our clients will, until the project has funding, we can't do detailed design. So we're going with concept plans to get the grants. And then part of that grant is the detailed design. So you've done plenty of work, I think, to make any funding agency impressed. You've vetted the process. You've vetted the proposal well enough that they could get behind it if they so choose.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, feel free if anything pops in your mind, you want to share any feedback anytime, please send it along. We'd appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
All right. Next up is our audit presentation.
Chris Stevens? Chris, what would you like up first? Start with the first. Got it.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Stevens. I'm the senior audit manager at the testing company. We were engaged to perform your annual financial statement audit. Just to give you a little bit of history, we started our preliminary audit work back in April. Came in and did most of our field work in early May. Wrapped everything up and got rest, Chris and Lisa, in the late May, early June. We met with the finance committee last week on June 9th. We gave a detailed presentation, and then they accepted the audit at that point in time. So I'll just kind of go a high-level presentation, go over the auditor's reports, the results of the audit. There are a few highlights I do want to make, because I think they're important. Other than that, I'll try to keep this brief. So we'll start with the report to the board of directors. This is an audit communication that's required under professional standards. This kind of summarizes some significant findings and issues or potential issues that come up during an audit. We'll start where it says qualitative aspects of accounting practices. We just like to highlight that management is ultimately responsible for the selection and the use of appropriate accounting policies. Significant accounting policies are described in Note A to the financial statements. However, as described in Note B in the financial statements, there was a new accounting pronouncement that was adopted in the current year, and that was Government Accounting Standards for APBPC number 87, related to the accounting for leases. That standard was adopted on a retrospective basis, so that means at least it was pushed back into the earliest year presented, so we restated prior year numbers to account for that new accounting standard. There was no transactions entered into by the commission during the year for which there was a lack of coordinated guidance or consensus, and all significant transactions were reported in the proper accounting period. We also like to highlight the fact that all financial statements do include accounting estimates. Not every number on the financial statements is an exact number. So as part of our audit, we do consider management's assumptions in computing their estimates and determine whether we consider them reasonable given the circumstances. And we do like to highlight some of the most significant accounting estimates in the financial statements. For the Bush, the first one obviously would be the fair market value of investments, including unrealized gains and losses on those investments. Those are based on quoted market prices in active markets. Fair values are obtained from a third-party pricing service. Management's estimates of the funding status of the pension plan is also another big estimate, as well as management's estimate of the other post-retirement benefit liability, especially the estimated liability to provide health care benefits for employees in their retirement. Also new in the current year is a new estimate related to the discount rate used in reporting the lease receivable rate in the course of GASB 87. That was based on a 15-year mortgage rate. That assumption was based on the fact that the original lease was a 5-year lease with two 5-year extensions. So the estimate of the 15-year rate is considered appropriate for that estimate of the lease receivable. Difficulties. I'll address the difficulties in kind of performing the audit as well as disagreements management all at once. We did not have any issues with this deal with management during the audit. We didn't have any disagreement with auditing or accounting matters as part of our audit either. Under corrective and uncorrected misstatements, under professional standards, we are required to accumulate all known or likely misstatements that we identified during our audit and communicate those to the appropriate level of management. We also communicate those to you here in this report. There were a couple of audit adjustments we proposed as part of our audit. Those were directly related to the adoption of the GASB 87. Management representation. Management did provide us a management representation letter that essentially says that they provide us all the information we requested. They answered all of our inquiries truthfully and honestly, and all the information they provided was accurate. Management consultation with other independent accountants. This deals with whether there was a opinion topic, essentially, if management disagreed or didn't like something we told them about it. They reached out to another accounting firm. That kind of firm is required to contact us to sure we have all the pertinent information, and we're required to let you know that happened. And we're not aware of any consultation with other outside independent accountants. On the next page, other matters. There is some information in the audit financial statements that we've done what's called limited procedures on. That's your management discussion analysis, as well as the 3 schedules in the back of the financial statements. Those are what's called required supplementary information. They're required to be included according to GASB, but we're not required to form procedures that allow us to issue an opinion on them. So we don't issue an opinion on them. However, we do perform procedures that allows us to ensure that those statements are materially consistent with the financial statements themselves. We also review your annual reports that's required to be submitted to the Public Authority Office under New York State Public Authority Law, and we would report to you any inconsistencies in that report we found based on information we gained in our audit. However, we didn't notice any inconsistencies with that report in our review. So that is the audited report to the board. Are there any questions on that report? If not, I will move on to the financial statements, and we'll start with the auditor's report, which is on page 5. This is our auditor's report. It starts right on the top. It gives our audited opinion. We did perform an audit of your financial statements as they're defined, and the notes of the financial statements as defined in the table of contents. In our opinion, the company financial statements should well present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the commission as of March 31st, 2023 and 2022, and the changes in its financial position and cash flows for the years that ended. This is what we call an unmodified or clean opinion, essentially the highest level of assurance you can get under a financial statement audit. Related to the basis of our opinions, we did conduct our audit in accordance with auditing standards from the accepted United States of America, as well as those standards contained in the auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States of America. We believe the audit evidence we obtained through our audit is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our audit opinion. We did add a paragraph to the report this year. This is emphasis of the matter. This is just to highlight the financial statement user that the change in accounting principle in the current year. This isn't a qualification of the report or opinion in any way. It's just to highlight, just let the user know that they should be aware of that change. Responsibilities of management. Management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements. They are also responsible for implementing and maintaining a system of internal control that allows them to prepare those financial statements that are free from fraud or error. They also should consider, as part of preparing the financial statements, they should consider whether there's any evidence or issues that individually or in aggregate would indicate there was an issue with the organization being able to continue as a joint concern. So that means the organization will continue to operate. If not, then you have to adjust the financial statements accordingly. Auditor's responsibilities under the financial statements. There's a lot of information here about this highlight that we are responsible for planning and performing our audit that allows us to express a reasonable opinion that your financial statements are free from material misstatement. We take what's called a risk-based approach, so we do not look at every transaction. So there's that unavoidable risk that there could be misstatements in the financial statements that did not get identified as part of the audit or get identified through the Commission's internal control process. However, our audit is designed to try to minimize that risk. As part of our audit, we do ensure that we exercise professional judgment and maintain professional skepticism throughout the audit process. As part of the audit, we do assess the risks of the material statement and identify where we think we should focus our attention. That includes obtaining and understanding of internal control related to the audit, and designing procedures to address areas that we think are weaker, and evaluating the appropriateness of the accounting policies used, as well as the significant estimates, as I mentioned before, made by management, and as well as evaluating the overall presentation of financial statements. Under required supplementary information, as I mentioned before, there is some information contained in the financial statements that we did not issue an audit opinion on or any assurance on. We did review that information to ensure this is consistent with the financial information, but we do not issue an audit opinion on it. Other information paragraph refers to your annual report that we do also review as part of our engagement. Again, we do not issue an opinion on it. Had we identified any inconsistencies with that report and our audit financial statements, we will disclose those here. The last paragraph is refers to the government audit standards report, which I'll address. A few things before the statement of position, because I can address the issues that came up during the year here. There were a couple items that highlight year over year that impacted your financial statements. First of all, there was a significant investment decline. I'm sure you can hear me that throughout the years. That the investments were significantly going down based on market performance. The organization did recognize about $550,000 investment loss during the year ended 2023. Second issue I'd like to highlight is that the organization's reporting of your net pension liability or net pension asset always on a one-year lag, because the net pension plan's year ends also March 31st. So they have not completed their evaluation as of March 31st, 2023. So your accounts are based on the March 31st, 2022 valuation, which the market performance is much better. The New York State retirement plan is actually in a 100% funded status. It was overfunded at March 31st, 2022. pension liability, we're showing that pension asset. I wouldn't plan on that being the same thing next year. I imagine they'll just back in the liability position next year. The other thing was your OPEB liability went down in the current year, and that was mainly driven by changing the discount rate. The discount rate was increased, so that led to a decrease in the overall liability that you have. And the last item I just want to highlight real quick was that now you have a couple, as Lisa mentioned, you have some new accounts on the statement of position in the current year that you didn't have in the prior year. You've got a lease receivable, or represents the present value of lease payments you expect to receive on your lease of this building, as well as a deferred inflow that's lease related, which represents the related revenue that's being deferred, but will be recognized over the remaining term of that lease. I will just have you go to note B of the financial statements. That kind of highlight what the impact of adopting GASB 87 was on the financial statements for the current year. So GASB 87, the concept behind the adoption of GASB 87 is that essentially a lease represents the financing of the right to use those specific assets. So if it's financing of an asset, then the related financing should be represented on the statement of position rather than just shown as a disclosure to the financial statement notes. So that was adopted in the current year and had to be adopted retrospectively, so we had to restate prior numbers. So this does kind of show you what the impact of adopting that was. It was adopted and it impacted it as of April 1st, 2022. So this chart shows what the related accounts balances were last year, as we reported in our prior audit financial statements, as well as what the impact was for the adoption of GASB 87. So the initial adoption of GASB 87 showed you recognize a lease receivable of $368,000. We also picked up a lease deferred inflow resources of $378,000. Which restated those numbers to the prior year. The last report I will go over real quick related to financial statements is our government auditing standards report. That's on page 26.
Sorry, Chris. Stay in the audit financial statements. Page 26.
Yeah.
Same report.
Document.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. When we perform an audit under government auditing standards, hey, Chris,
So what is this thing? It's called what, Zoom? Do what now?
Share your screen.
Oh, there. Sorry, Chris. And forward.
whenever we perform an audit under government audit standards, we also issue the second report. This report addresses a couple issues. It addresses our consideration of your internal control over financial reporting, as well as your compliance with laws and regulations that have a direct and material impact on the financial statements. Part of our planning our audit, we do consider the internal control over the organization, but we consider it to the extent that allows us to plan and perform our audit. We don't test your internal control to the extent that allows us to issue an opinion on its effectiveness, and accordingly, we do not issue an opinion on effectiveness. However, if in that process we become aware of deficiencies in internal control, material weaknesses, or significant deficiencies, we are required to report those here in this report. And I'm happy to report we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control with financial reporting that are required to be reported under government audit standards. The next page, we also consider your compliance with laws and regulations and grant agreements that could have a direct and material impact on the financial statements. And we would report any non-compliance with those items that we identified as part of our audit here. Again, I'm happy to report we didn't identify any non-compliance as reported under government audit standards. So that's the results of our financial statement audit. Is there any questions related to that? Okay. Now, there's one more report I will just briefly touch on. You don't have to finish one.
Okay.
This is a two-page report. This is our examination report related to your compliance with your investment guidelines and public authority law. We do perform an examination of your compliance related to those items, and we did not identify any non-compliance with your investments, with your own investment deadlines or New York State public authority laws, which unmodified opinion on your compliance with those requirements. That's all I have. If you have any questions on that?
And the audit committee had a much longer presentation, more detailed presentation on this last Friday.
We've also met with KeyBank on 2 occasions to talk about our investments, to talk about whether our investment policies should be changed, whether they're adequate, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, we had agreement across the board that they were appropriate and they were adequate and the safeguards are appropriate and so on and so forth.
Thanks, John. That's all I have. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Hey, Chris, it's easy for us to go on about an audit report because they're always good, but kudos to Lisa and others for allowing us to have a yawn.
No problem. I'm used to being.
Lisa and Patty.
No offense.
As Tom said, who's the partner on this this year from Majeski in the audit committee, he said, you know, typically these audits, for their field work, it's a 5-day project, sometimes longer, depending if they hand you shoeboxes full of stuff. And it took them 3, less than 3.
That's good stuff.
Speaks a lot. Okay, thank you, Chris.
So I think we have a few action items on the agenda.
You do?
Chris, could you walk us through the first one?
Sure. The first one, action item A. Many of these things are tied into our annual parish reporting. That's due at the end of June. It's a real property report for the fiscal year 22-23. Anything that was acquired, anything that was disposed of. So bullet A identifies the property that we closed on in December, 15.1 acres off Cordell Road. And then B identifies that we did not dispose of any real property, and that performance needed $5,000 gold.
Any discussion on this first item? And if not, can we have a motion to approve this report?
I'll make a motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, next up.
Okay, these are the compliance documentation reports actually for the Paris reporting, again, that we submit at the end of this month. There is an assessment of internal controls for fiscal year 22-23 that follows that. You've heard a lot about that. A lot of that comes out of the audit that we just did with the Majeski. It also happens throughout the year as part of our review. Lisa and I spend quite a lot of time on the employee handbook and policies and procedures when new ones come about. Ties into that. There's the annual report on the prompt payment policy. Our prompt payment policy requires us to pay our bills. Basically, if we get an invoice within 30 days, we must pay it within 30 days, or we must pay an invoice within 30 days if it's accurate. And we do that. We have done that. The full Paris annual procurement report. So those are all expenditures to any vendor $5,000 or more over the fiscal year. That is just the URL, just that link, because it's a lot of pages, 70 something. And then finally, there's the annual report financial summary in Paris, and that is directly tied to the audit. So I'll show you those quickly. The assessment of internal controls, and all these are on our website.
I'll make a motion.
You didn't want to see it, did you? Well, I guess I just described it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say.
Okay. Is there any? There might be questions. Yeah. Any questions on that?
Well, do the documents identify risks associated with operations?
They do not. They do not. They do not identify risk. The audit helps with that. And then we have our internal policies, like for finance. We follow those and just looks at those. So the risk is actually evaluated outside. Okay. Any other questions? Excellent.
So that was the actual motion. Okay.
Yes,
All right.
so we had
Make sure the minutes
John
are
and we
clear.
had Keith.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
We have one multi-year vendor contract. This is a one-year amendment and extension to the contract that we have with Wojcicki. Wojcicki's contract was a 5-year contract. It was a 3-year with 2 one-year extensions. That ends June 30th. Recommendation is to extend that for 1 year. They are already working with us now on the new GASB 96, which has to do with cloud-based leases. Things like Office 365, things like your IT support company that has security backups, things like that. So you will see, again, adjustments to financials like you saw this year for GASB 87. Next year, they're helping us with that. The plan is to go out to bid probably in September for another 5-year contract for audit firm going forward. So this is just a 1-year event. At the same price as this year, there's no increase.
And no other changes to the contract other than the term?
No. That is your impact.
Any discussion?
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor?
Thank you. Okay, we have a piece of property here, 153 D Lincoln Avenue. So for some context, here's the block. I'll show you what it looks like up close. But here's the landfill throughway, the north way. This is Rapp Road coming through here, and this is the railroad. This area back here is the restored area of the former mobile home park to the north of the landfill. This property, close up, is 2 1/4 acres. It's owned by a family that owned this piece of property that sold to the Nature Conservancy about 20 years ago, and then the Nature Conservancy sold it to the state. It's held by DEC. All this property now is held by DEC. So this property is bounded on 3 sides by dedicated preserve land. So they approached me, asked if we would be interested in selling it, and I said, after some discussion, what the purchase price may be, discovered it would most likely be a reasonable selling price. So I have an appraisal going through now that should have started Tuesday. And the resolution is to allow me as the executive director to acquire the property up to fair market value, so that would be the appraised value. And it's assessed at $85,000 right now. So it may, I don't know if it'll appraise higher than that or close to it. Fairly dry and flat. It's a pretty good buildable lot. So we'll see. That money would be about $6,000. And it is recommended for full protection.
Could we add language to this one to say pursue the acquisition of marketable title of 153D Lincoln Ave, just to make sure that title is clear?
Say that one more time, pursue.
The acquisition of marketable title of 153D.
Our real property policy.
Yeah. Or something saying,
No,
pursuant to real property policy. Either one would address that.
we should add that. It should reference the real property policy.
Yeah, maybe that's the easier way to do it, because I think the policy references marketable and insurable, right?
I'm sure, yeah, it was required because we required the title insurance.
Right, so maybe the better way to address it is just in accordance with
Yeah.
the commission's real property policy.
Other properties. Okay.
Any other questions?
No.
I will make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So our last action item is the operating budget. So as you know, we present an operating budget in December, which is prepared in October, which is basically 6 months into our fiscal year. So often we come back in June or September with an updated, modified operating budget. So the changes that have happened thus far are specifically, now that the fiscal year is closed, there's another 465,000 and change left over from the Environmental Protection Fund from previous years. That's rolling again. So if you look at the actual budget here, it shows you. So there's another 465 in revenue. And I'm going to point out this and then explain it a little better and do it fairly quickly. Under contractual rollover, there are this line here identifies funds that have been identified over the past number of years for EPF funds that haven't been expended. And remember, one of them was a large chunk, almost 1.9 million, that was encumbered and then became unencumbered because there's a number of years where the commission wasn't getting its full appropriation. So instead of trying to spend that money immediately, we put it in that category because DEC wanted to see it in a budget. So that's where it was. So that number, that 2.027, based on this proposed budget, drops out of 1.36. So we would be expending the 465 here, plus an additional 664. That makes sense. That's 1.29. And that's broken up here. And here's the expenses. This is where it comes out. 300,000 for additional habitat. Communications, primarily advertising, marketing, and outreach, that's 22,000. 9,000 is training, that's staff training. Occupancy is primarily, it's not primarily, it is the Discovery Center. Part of that is going to be technology, so we don't have to have things like that. The touchscreen alone, these projectors were installed in 2006, as the ones were in the current classroom. So that's included in that. There's a full LED conversion to continue along being a more sustainable organization. So LED conversion, full facility, that's a $20,000 project. And then there's more funding for low flow water fixtures on the second floor. We did that in the first floor. We did do that on the second floor. So doing that. And then going down here, we have 6,500. That's for external presenters when we do events here. And the large expense is under capital. The largest one is 700,000. So I'm recommending that we put 700,000 in the budget because we have that contractual rollover to pursue construction documents for the grounds project. Price tag that you saw on Aaron's presentation was 655,000. I'm recommending we put in 700,000. John and I had a conversation yesterday thinking about, do you really want to do construction documents for all of these phases if we have to phase it to make sure that those documents remain fresh? We've had advice coming from a landscape architect that we worked with going back on this project that if you write the RFQ correctly, you should be able to keep it fresh. But I think we want to go back and ask those questions. So we may spend up to 700,000 or not, but it would be for construction documents. And the other reason I'm recommending it is we've been given advice that we would be even more fundable with construction documents to show that the organization has resources, put resources forth in construction documents, and we're ready to go if you give us the money to actually. And then on top of that, other capital expenses include another 30,000 for replacing and updating all the security cameras on the building. And there's a temporary exhibit in there. But security cameras, not to harp on this, but it's in your board packet from the media articles. Did you see the dog that's tied to a tree 2 months ago? Somebody tied a dog to a tree when it was over 90 degrees at the intersection. And our cameras can pick up a vehicle, but it can't pick up a license plate. And we've had a number of issues where we work with the police, and that kind of thing would help. And that person the person I alleged to have done that has been arrested. And the dog is happily in a new home. It's probably quite fat. that's kind of a summary of where we are, and we end up with the same balance at the end of the day.
So just to clarify, 745 for the construction documents, are we
700.
700?
Yep.
Okay, so is that 700 out of the 745 listed here?
Yep. The other 45 is 30,000 for security cameras.
Okay.
It's 15,000 for a temporary exhibit.
Okay.
Because they're over 5,000, they would be capitalized.
And you do think 700 will buy us construction documents for all of the phases of transfer?
Yeah, I mean, they gave us really good, Bergen gave us really good detailed numbers for the project, including construction documents. Like I said, 655, and those are real numbers, as of, when I say real numbers, post-COVID numbers, like high inflation numbers. So I may come back to say that.
I do agree that having a complete set of documents would help with outreach for funding.
We'll do some more research on it. Keep it in the budget. Okay. Any questions on budget? Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Nancy,
Second.
Don, all in favor? Thank you.
And that concludes our action items. I think we're right on time.
We're right on
presentation.
One comment on the new concept plans. I'm always impressed with the amount of science and basic research that goes on here. And hopefully, as we redesign this, we somehow find a way for that to be recognized and to be, just to be made more visible to the public. We emphasize the natural environment that's out there, as well we should, but I don't know that we recognize all the science and research that goes on here that behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean,
so just a thought.
We could do more of that. I mean, we have a monthly, it's called the Science Lecture Series that's sponsored by the Friends. And we do that here.
Yeah.
Once
But
a
I
month.
was thinking that maybe in the new design there could be a place that recognizes
The science
that. Yeah, exactly.
through like interpretive science and stuff like that.
Some way to draw attention to the basic science and basic research that is award-winning that goes on here.
Yeah, like for example, the Whippoorwill article that everybody will
Yeah. Yep,
in
exactly.
conservation.
Yep.
And that was, a project led by Neil, Dylan, and Steve,
Yep.
and our staff. And important enough, well, the striper got the cover, but come on. But I think she got that. But that's the point, John.
Yep.
Yes. Okay.
Tammy,
ready? Tammy Price is our preserved naturalist educator, if you haven't met her before. So she's a new, sort of new addition to our, newish. So you can share whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I supervise the volunteer naturalists here, and I just wanted to highlight some of the amazing work that they do here at the Albany Highbush. So the volunteer naturalist program was created in 1998. The primary responsibility of the volunteer naturalist is to promote greater understanding of the pine bush, to give person-to-person education in an informal setting right out on the trails, and to just patrol the trails and help us to learn about what's going on out there, provide information to visitors, and report back to the staff on ecology, management, and other things that are going on, and also to tell visitors about the history. If they ask anything about rules and regulations, they can talk about that too. So what do they report on when they give reports to us? They tell us what trailheads they visited, what trails on those trailheads they visited, how many visitors they saw, how many visitors they engaged with or talked to, the topics that they discussed with the visitors, wildlife and plants that they see or things that they note about them, any trail condition issues, and any rule violations that they see. So with their visit highlights, they always send amazing pictures. So they sent pictures of the plants, of the animals, of phenology happening, showing us things blooming, and also like just interesting things that they see, like car parks on the trail, and then they ask me where do we come from. So they're really great at keeping us up to date at what's going on out there, but we can't be out there all the time. So in the first 6 months that I was here, between October and April 2023, the volunteer naturalists did 185 trailhead visits. They encountered 1,209 visitors, and they engaged with 727 of them. So they tell us about noteworthy interactions with visitors and things that they saw. So I just wanted to share a couple quotes. One of our naturalists said, "It was a beautiful Sunday afternoon walk on the red, yellow, and yellow trail. 1.65 miles, 55 degrees. The trail was clear and pleasant. They observed a pair of walkers and a walker with a dog who they did not greet since they were either ahead or behind me. They greeted other walkers and bikers who crossed the path. It was a beautiful spot and the evidence of the brush hogging and control burn. They got the fish finds looked great." And that was one of our new naturalists. And then Sonia saw some horseback riders and made a comment about that. A lovely spring day. It was nice to see horseback riders about to enjoy the Purple Trail from the Madison Ave Extension Trailhead. They also tell us about all the different wildlife and that it is a preserve. They reported on 67 bird species, 12 insects, 8 mammal species, 8 reptile and amphibian species, and 1 fish. And they see, I'm sure, a lot more, but they only tell me what they're absolutely sure about because they don't want to make any mistakes. They're really great. And here are some of their amazing pictures. Toby, Hobomap skipper, I think that is, a crappie. Oh, that's one of my pictures. Sorry. That's one of my pictures of the Carter Blues. And then a red squirrel. And here's a couple more. I like the ones with the mallards and the turtle and the stick in the water. And then that big turtle at the bottom there. They tell us about all the plants they see. They reported on 23 plant species blooming from October to April. And again, provided us with these beautiful pictures.
That's recent habitat restoration overall.
Yep.
That bottom right corner.
And then they give us some of their reflections from the trail, showing us things where they've gone out with other people, or things that they've noticed that were very beautiful. So there's a couple of pictures from naturalist hikes. We do once a month hikes together, and then a picture of some nature currently on the trail and a beautiful sunset picture. And then again, they give us these wonderful quotes. Things are getting ready to burst forth. When they get done writing and testing wildflowers, it's going to be amazing. And that was about that restoration work. It's lovely to stand in the quiet of the early spring forest and slowly hear the woods come alive around me with soft bird songs. At first, I felt quite alone, and then listening hard, began to hear the soft not hatches from all directions. Then little tiny chirps and twitters of the tap, tap, tap of the woodpecker. Then suddenly the sky was filled with caw, 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 as crows screamed over the trees, mobbing something I never spotted. And And then one from a nice hike that one of our naturalists brought out of people from the Daughters of the American Revolution, which she's a member of. A great time was had by all. Most of the people on the hike had never been to the Congress before and expressed the desire to come back to. We also went into the Discovery Center. So not only do they patrol the trails, but they bring people here to experience the pine fish. They also tell us about trail conditions, trail issues, and rule violations. So here's a couple pictures of a tree down and some fence that was down. And again, they provide us with photos of the amazing management work happening in the preserve. And this is the King's Highway Barrens from our June naturalist hike on this past Sunday. They're also interested in helping out with stewardship whenever possible, and we try to make it easier for them for things that they want to do. So a lot of naturalists ask if they can help by replacing missing trail markers, and Jesse was super awesome and made these trail marker replacement kits that they can come into the center, pick up, and do that when they want. They're absolutely not required to do it, but they always want to get things done out there. So super shout out to Jesse for making that possible. And then the most impressive volunteer naturalist news is that we added 9 new volunteer naturalists to our team in 2023. They are ready and raring and have been out on the trails reporting their interactions and sightings and conditions on the trail. So I just wanted to give a shout out to those 9 new volunteers, which brings our naturalist team to 35. But that's not all they do. Some of our volunteer naturalists also do other things for the Albany Fish Preserve Commission. So these are some of the additional volunteer positions that they hold. Some of them are part of the Friends of the Pine Bush, president and committee member, and other just members, community outreach, community science, certified seed collector. I met one of my naturalists in the parking lot this morning who was heading out to do some seed collecting. We have several who are Discovery Center docents, some volunteer program assistants, and our jury photo exhibit judges are volunteer naturalists. So thank you for letting me talk about these amazing people, and they just, every time I get a report, I'm amazed at how thorough they are and how much they do interact with the people in the preserve. Thanks.
Come sign up to become a volunteer naturalist.
So you, Beth does these events, and there's also on our website a page that you can request to be a volunteer naturalist. You'll see Beth first, and then once that is done, and then they would see me. But right now, we are not accepting volunteer naturalists because we have 35, and I feel like that's pretty good for now. But I'm sure eventually some will retire and we'll have to get new ones. But everyone's always jumping to be a volunteer naturalist because we wouldn't want to be out of the trails every month.
What kind of training and orientation do you give the naturalists when they
So
start?
we give them training on the history and ecosystem of the pine bush, interpretation, how to interact with people in difficult situations, how to talk about some of the more controversial issues in the pine bush. So we give them like as many tools as possible so they have everything in their back pocket that they need. And I'm always available for them when they have any other questions.
Any other questions, Pam? All right. Thanks, Pam.
Thank you.
Under presentations, I have first aid CPR training for Jackie. Jackie's going to do that in September, and I knew that, and yet I put it on the agenda, and then I thought I took it off the agenda, but I did not. So you will hear that in September. So we can move to other business.
Do we have other business?
One thing I was going to point out is I will give you the conservation magazine that has the whippoorwill research in it. And this is our annual report. So Chris Stevens mentioned that they review numbers in the annual report. They don't give us any feedback on it, but you review it. This is the final version. Wendy Craney works with our staff to put this together and how this is done. So I'll give you a copy of that. And if you want it electronically, I can do that, and that's on the website.
Anyone else or other business? If not, can we have a motion to adjourn? My kids. You. You get the second to John.
That's it.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Yes, I do. Oh, put it up there. One way to really go get.
Actually,